A little bit about the admissions process, your academics, your extracurriculars, your essays, what you need to be doing to get into Penn. You will apply to one specific school unless you're applying to a dual degree program. These dual degree programs give you a degree from two schools at once. So that would be something where you apply to two schools, but you must declare which school you'd like to study in. You don't actually have to declare a specific major. You can indicate your interest through your application. You can talk about what major you're interested in or what you'd want to study when you apply and weave that into your admissions narrative. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about kind of admissions, what the acceptance rate looks like, and how competitive Penn is. So Penn has an acceptance rate of 5.7%. This was a record low of 5.68% for the class of 2025, which was people who applied in 2020. The year before, they accepted 8.7% of applicants. This is probably in part because they received their largest application pool ever, comprised of over 56,000 students, a 34% increase from the year. How does acceptance rate compare to other schools? Harvard saw an increase in 40% applications, and Brown reported a 26% increase. And this is probably due mostly to COVID. A lot of candidates are really excited about going to college because some of the financial uncertainty that COVID has caused. But fortunately, Penn provides 100% of demonstrated financial need for all 4 years for its undergrad students. Basically, if your family has a specific economic situation, they will adjust and prorate their tuition to match what you can afford to pay for. Many schools, including Penn, have ramped up their online recruiting efforts. So if you're hoping to apply, you should definitely take advantage of these, but you're already on the right track by being at today's stream. And there's also a little bit of a tightening going on because some admits are deferring because of COVID, leaving less room at the undergraduate level. And many schools also decided to make tests optional. So that's all factoring into this decreased admissions rate and big applicant pool. The trend seems to be more applicants and slimmer acceptance rates. To give a little information about the demographics, what the population is like, there are just under 10,000 full-time undergrads. The freshman class is usually about 2,500 students. But before we take this admissions rate at face value, we want to talk about two groups of applicants that are going to affect the entire pool. And those are athletes and legacies. UPenn is a D1 school, so coaches are connecting with high school students as soon as it's possible in their high school career to recruit them for teams. So they are looking for athletes and legacy students. So like most of the other Ivies, Penn does account for legacies, even if they won't own up to it. They'll never own up to it, but they certainly do. 10% of the class of 2025 was a legacy. So they had a grandparent or a parent who attended Penn. So this can kind of provide a little bit of a boost to applicants who are already strong and well prepared to end this. So these kind of two groups have a higher chance of admission based on these two facets of their identity. There's a slightly higher acceptance rates for those groups. But of course, things like GPA and test score still factor in. So keep that in mind if you're not a legacy or an athlete, it's not game over. And if you're interested, you can always see your chances of acceptance at Penn for free with CollegeVine's chancing calculator. Visit collegevine.com. So just a brief overview of what the admissions process looks like at Penn. So you're going to have a primary reader, a secondary reader, and then it's going to go to the admissions committee. So first, your primary reader is just the first person who's going to read through your application. This is usually your regional admissions officer. So depending on where you live, there will be one person who oversees reading the applications from that area of the US or of the world. Then you have your secondary reader. Oh, wrong direction. And then it eventually goes to the admissions committee. And this is who's ultimately going to decide to admit, defer, waitlist, or deny your admission to the school. So now that we've talked a little bit more about the academic profile, we can jump back into how this actually looks at the admissions level. We talked about the admissions academic index. Now the school is going to develop a different cutoff for all of these different applicant groups we've talked about. So different demographics, legacy students, international students, and those kind of things going on. So basically, students who don't meet this cutoff are most likely going to be rejected. Although with COVID, there's a little bit of a less systematic element. And now we're going to see what this looked like in the most recent admitted class. So the university doesn't have super specific data for the class of 2025, but 56% are US citizens who identify as people of color. The class is pretty divided pretty equally between men and women. So 50%, 54% are female, 46% are male. Sorry about that. I'm stumbling over all my numbers. But you should note that the university currently uses traditional sex to describe the gendered makeup of the community. So it doesn't really include information about gender identity that's inclusive to transgender, non-binary, and other gender identities beyond a simple male-female dichotomy. Okay. And last, we've got just a split up between domestic and international students. So mostly domestic students, but a good chunk of international students as well. All 50 states are represented in the class, but the highest concentration of admitted students are from not Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, sorry, New York, California, Jersey, Texas, and Florida, although we do have a couple of Philly students represented. 11% of the class, as I mentioned, are international, and they represent over 95 countries. So now we're going to talk specifically about our extracurriculars. What schools are interested in is a sort of specialized applicant. So while a well-rounded applicant may be impressive, you really want to show your passion and commitment to a smaller number of extracurriculars. So they don't necessarily want generalists, but like superstars within a particular domain. So if you've done something for a really long time and you've shown commitment for that for a really long time, that's great. For example, I was a Girl Scout for 12 years, so not 13 plus years, but 12 is pretty close. And that was the focus of some of my admissions material. But of course, it's good to show other interests. That's going to make you seem more interesting and three-dimensional. Maybe that's branching out into something else, or you want to show things that are related to your prospective major or your school that you're applying to. So if you're a STEM major, most STEM majors are going to have really STEM-heavy profiles. Maybe you've done things like robotics or athletes. So it's good to show interdisciplinary interest beyond just what you intend to major in. How would one go about identifying a spike in their extracurriculars? So there's this kind of difference here between Renaissance people who are doing a lot of different extracurriculars and key people who are kind of doing one or two more narrow things. Your spike extracurricular, or kind of your main focus extracurricular that is helping drive your admissions narrative, is going to be the one that you're most committed to, you've spent the most time on, and has provided you the most personal development and something you're really passionate about. So it should be something you love, you can talk about it at length, and something you have done for a while or you can show your commitment to, whether that's years or hours per week or how consistent you are. So they're taking into fact that kind of stuff, your commitment, your consistency, the uniqueness of your activity, and also the things that you accomplish when you're doing these activities. So things like your leadership positions, your awards, placements, projects, initiatives, all that good stuff. Each school kind of has different expectations regarding your number of extracurriculars and your accomplishments. But again, it's just good to focus on the things that you can show you're really passionate about and you participated in really strongly. If I have an extracurricular or that has no relation to my academics or my major, is it still effective? Yes, definitely. Not everything you do has to be related to what you want to study in college or what you intend to pursue. For example, I did theater all throughout high school. I did not go into a theater degree at Penn, so it doesn't have to be related. Since there are a lot of students with 4.0s and good SAT, ACT scores, what can I do to make your application stand out and catch admissions eye? So extracurriculars and achievements are one place that you can definitely do that and help boost your application.